there was a great presentation yesterday talking about inbound marketing and the material that you need to use, that you can use, like white papers and those kinds of things. Well, in our case, we're a company that provides, we're the company, WoodWing, provides tools called Enterprise and Elvis that help users create content, distribute content, store, find those assets in a variety of different ways. I'm Jeff Gapp. Essentially, I've been in publishing since 1992 with a variety of different companies. First one was one called Baseview Harris Media Span, and then of course with WoodWing since 2005. And we have two offerings. I mentioned the first one, Enterprise, a multi-channel, and then we have Elvis DAM, which is a digital asset management system. So the reason that our software has actually developed in the way that it has, and there's a couple of things that have happened. Starting in 2010, we had a contract with Time Inc. to write software that would put their content onto the iPad. And that was really, even before then, starting in 2005, we had the capabilities of pushing our content out to multiple channels. And you can kind of see here that, and this is actually my behavior here, right? I'm on the phone almost all the time, except maybe at work, and then I'm on my iPad in the morning and afternoon, and on my laptop during the day and at work. So this is why the multi-channel is so important. So one of our customers, of course, is Hearst UK and Hearst US. We also provide the production software for Time Inc., for Meredith here in the States. A wide variety of corporate customers, Yamaha, just a trainload of them, and you can see those on our website. I won't go through them. But here it says that there's more than 50% of all their web traffic's coming from their mobile devices. Huge. And every year that's gone by, we work with our publishers to say they have a term for creating content called digital first. Really a bit of a misnomer. The whole concept of creating content and calling it digital first, well, you create content, and multi-channel is just the delivery of that content to a place, right? So you don't have to say digital first. You can just say, I create content and I deliver it to the web, mobile, tablet, print, whatever it may be. But you can see that there's some great, out on the Hearst website, we're talking about their strategies. Mobile's it. I mean, they really are pushing content to mobile. And so we're helping take a lot of their existing print stuff, push it to the mobile, but also newly created content just meant for web channels. Why is managing your creative assets so important? Look, so the one thing is the multi-channel publishing is going to just a huge increase in these types of files. And if you think about it, just take the case of an image where you have a raw file. If you want to print it, you might make it into a TIFF file. You want to put it on the web, you might have 3 variations of that. You might want to put it on mobile, you're going to have another variation of that. That's a lot of files from one particular kind of a file, right? And so we can automate a lot of the creation of that, but it still means you need to be able to store it, find it, and use it. So as part of this first part, then we have marketing and publishing firms need to create strategies to efficiently manage their stocks of files. Invariably, my colleague Joy, who's out here in the crowd, and we do a lot of demonstrations for customers, maybe like you, agencies. And the first thing that they'll say, we'll ask them is, how do you store your files? And they'll say, well, we got a file server. I'm like, oh, hang on. We've got SharePoint. SharePoint's a nice tool, requires an administrator. You really need a tool that makes it easy for a user to go ahead and find and use those assets. So you need a strategy. If you don't do that, you're wasting time and money. And one of the great things that I learned a long time ago is that when you start to do an ROI on this system, it's very hard to do, because the amount of time that you save is usually going to be in a minute here, a minute here, a minute here, and it starts to add up to hours. So not having a strategy to store these files and find them costs you a lot of time, and you run into a risk of legal issues. In the DAM space, one of the big things that's happening right now is rights management, right? Well, what is rights management? Well, let me give you a couple of examples. So There's expiration dates, right? Or embargo dates when this asset can be used. There's license dates when something can be when it expires and I can't use it anymore. One of our customers is Bear. Hopefully, Aaron's gone. I was calling it Bauer. It's an Australian company. He knows how to pronounce it. So they're a large publisher in Australia, and so they ingest 45,000 images a day from all of their different sources. They use our DAM to then apply expiration dates, to apply the metadata that they need, so that they can understand what happens at the end of a 30-day cycle. If the asset hasn't been used, it's deleted. If it has been used, it's archived within the DAM. So what they're doing is essentially limiting their risk of legal issues of using assets by knowing the metadata, deleting the things that they haven't used. Digital asset management strategy is really about increasing your workflow, the efficiency of your workflow. Look, I need to go find something. I can't find it. Where is it? Well, I know it was used in this book. Where is it on the file server? Do we have the rights to it? Well, it's in an Excel spreadsheet over here. Can you tell me about it? That's a real example from last week of a large magazine in New York. And then DAMs through integration provide the ability to single source assets for multiple uses. This is huge. How many times have you guys made versions of files? It said version 1 _ version 2 good version, version 5. This is the okay version. Right, so you've really got two concepts here. There's this integration with systems, okay, and then there's this single sourcing of assets. So single sourcing of assets, meaning your DAM is the place where you store the initial file and any variations of the file, and that's where people go to get it. They don't store it on their hard drive. They don't store it on a file server. They put it into the system. Integration means that from the perspective of dealing with customers, one of the best examples that we have is the idea that I have Salesforce and I have customer services representatives here working with my customers, getting emails, getting phone requests. Those customers want information. Wouldn't it be great if in Salesforce they could open up a window, type a query for the product name, go ahead, grab the manual and the technical specs and send them out to the customer? Big Ass Fans does that. So that's a pretty cool company. Really interesting company, really interesting integrations. We also, and I'll move on here, but we also have an integration with a large internet retailer where they use our DAM to have vendors submit content plus images in a portal. It comes into our DAM. It's distributed out to the product information system. It's distributed out to the websites, and it's all done without a single person actually watching it happen. DAM's not new, but it's still not mature. There's these 6 main use cases. So creative group production, high-end production. We talk about publishing, general purpose, line of business support. That was the Big Ass Fans example. Departmental marketing groups, and enterprise and customer experience. So tip number 1, take time to analyze the requirements. So this is not meant to be a presentation to sell you on WoodWing products, but to try and get some ideas around projects. As you're doing the things that you're doing around digital marketing and you need assets and you need things, you need to think about where those assets exist. If you don't have a system, you probably should have one, and then you need to think about it really heavily. So here, we're analyzing the requirements. A workflow audit is required. You have to know what you're doing today to be able to take advantage of a system that you might install tomorrow. If you don't know what you're doing today, how do you know if you've succeeded or failed? You might have just created a bigger mess. Okay? Who are the people that are going to use it? Right? So I talked a moment ago about we have Salesforce, people who are using Salesforce. We have creative groups who may be putting content into these systems. They create the final content that the customer service groups are using. You may have vendors who are submitting content to you. You may have a portal on your website where you have marketing material and people can come and download that. The DAM can serve as the central point to feed the content to those other destinations. But you got to think about it. Take advantage of all of the things that these tools can do. What are your goals? Match status quo and then user expectations. Match status quo, what are we doing today? We want to have, at minimum, the functionality that we have today, And now, because we know what our target groups are and what their expectations are, we can match what's going to happen in the future. And again, think about tomorrow, not just today. So a tool like our Elvis Dam imports a massive amount of different file types, audio, video, images. But then that's one part of it. Again, we talk about this idea of integration and working with those assets and using them in other places. All right. Also, so tip number 2 is ensure unlimited scalability. We have some customers who have 25,000 assets in their system, and we have one customer who has 600 million assets in the system. Kind of a wide range. So tool's scalable. But again, the point being is, look, the thing you need to think about is storage. Okay, how much are you going to consider? Lots of the DAM vendors will, if you wanted to go on premise, you can do that. But that means that your IT group has to provision a system, get a server, get storage, do all those things. They may be resistant to that. What you can do is then also do SaaS. Cluster technology, that just again goes back to our scalability. And on-premise versus cloud. A cloud system imposes no limits when it comes to scaling. So one of the things that we're doing is we're introducing a SaaS model here at the beginning of June. And one of the key things that is a marketing piece and a technology piece is there's unlimited storage. Because that's where we think things are going. So, but what that means is that you guys as users really don't have to worry about so much about this infrastructure piece. You can worry about the features and functionality of the system. Okay. On-premise requires internal action for scaling. Your IT department, right, has to have buy-in. You've got to integrate the tool within your system. All of those are fine things. It just sometimes it takes a little bit more time. You have to do capital expenses maybe versus a regular expense. So again, something to think about here. Tip number 3, and this is probably the most important thing of all. Why do you buy a DAM? Why do you buy one of these systems? Because you want to put stuff in it and find it. Right? I mean, that's the most basic thing of all. You want to find it in an organized fashion. And most of these systems have a couple of ways of being able to search. One is what I'll call Google-esque, if you will. You have a little box, you type the word in, I'll use the example Greek, and it returns back all of the assets that have either in the text of the file, like a Word file, a PDF file, they have the word Greek, or the metadata contains the word Greek as well. And then you can filter, right? So it comes back with 1,000 things, and then you say, I want a tag. What metadata is that things around the file. So in this case, who, what, where, when, and why, and you're organizing the workflow, and the metadata about copyright and licenses is very, very important. This, again, I keep coming back to this, but this copyright and licensing and rights has just exploded in the last year and a half because of the necessity to be able to use these assets in a variety of different places, right? So if I'm a publisher and I contract a job out, my contract says I can use this asset in any form that I want to use it in. And the photographer goes, no, you can't. And then we start a debate. But you got to know what the end result is to be able to use these things. Metadata strategy. What metadata is relevant for your workflow? There's standards that these systems follow, XMP, IPTC, those are all terms that are within this world. They're about certain kinds of information, rights, tagging, and so on. Who will capture them, which metadata, and how? That's huge. That's probably the single most important thing. You take an image, a video, an audio file, it may come in with the metadata that you need, it may not. And let me give you an example of why this is so important. One of our largest publishers now has a digital library powered by a DAM. And somebody very high up, COO, asked, how many pictures of a Christmas tree do we actually need to have? Because they get requests in, right? Oh, I need more pictures of Christmas trees for this Christmas edition that's coming out. I don't know. Well, it costs us $5,000 to send somebody out to go take pictures of Christmas trees. How many do we have? Nobody knows. So what they then did is said, look, we've got all of these assets. What we need is we need a librarian and we need a metadata strategy. They looked at what the assets they had and how they were reusing them, and the number they came back was 12%. So every asset that they ever taken was sitting in a pile, and only 12% of those assets were being reused. Okay, that's not good. So what they then did, digital librarian and somebody who will capture the metadata and put it in and attach it to these assets. Right, and metadata again is tagging. It's a Christmas tree, it's got red ornaments, it has blue lights, maybe. And their reuse went up to 56%. That's pretty good. And you got to think about that. What that is that's a budget for sending out a creative person to go out and take the pictures. A photographer in New York, could be a photographer going in Southern California, going out, taking pictures, providing them back. The people in the magazine will pick 3. The rest of them are just available and sitting there. They may be applicable next year. But we need to know what we have. We need to be able to go and take a look at it, and then we need to be able to make a decision if we need something new or if we can reuse something we've already paid for. That's what metadata is all about, in addition to rights and so on. This one, define a variable structure for storing your files, is interesting because it talks about company brand, product, and channel. So I mentioned earlier, when you go to, in most systems, you go to look for something, it's going to be a keyword search. Greek. It finds all the files that say Greek. That's a Google-esque model. It means that we're searching on metadata and text. Could be, though, that you have people in your environment that are much more oriented towards structure of assets. So I could dump everything into a digital asset management system, have no structure at all. I could still find it if I'm tagging correctly. This is a case where a system needs to have a structure, and the reason you need to have a structure is not only to find things in an organized fashion, but also because then you can apply permissions, capabilities within the system to these kinds of files. What I mean by that is, if you put files here that are in channel, and the channel's web, and one group can only see the finished files, you can apply permissions on this channel and say, if the status is production and you're in group web, you can only see the finished stuff. If you're in the group creative, you can see everything, including from beginning to end. So very important to understand a structure. We talked about metadata and text, and this one's a little bit of this naming and convention for your files. Naming convention in a publishing workflow is going to be just like we see up here. It could be brand, product, channel. I don't think it's as important as making sure you have metadata, but it's certainly a consideration for usage. A lot of people use it to help also guide systems to get the right kinds of files. So that's 3. Integration, maximizing ROI. This is where we were talking earlier about CRMs that can integrate with your DAM system, websites that can, your web tools. So you might be using a Drupal, you might be using WordPress, something completely different. So that tool needs to integrate with your DAM. What's the point of centralizing all the content if this person or the system can't gain access to use it? So what we do is we have it's actually a little plugin for WordPress and Drupal that allows a user to click on it, search Elvis for whatever they're looking for, insert the asset into the post, and then post that to the website. So you want to make sure that you can do integrations. It's a centralized repository, and it's not only creative files, it's business productivity files, Word, Excel, and so on. Integration of DAM system with these other things, you want to make sure it can work with Creative Suite, editorial systems, all of these other things. And you need to make sure that when you're taking a look at it, and we try and be very careful that you have an open architecture. Right? What's the tool built on? Proprietary types of software, or is it built on something that's open, and developers within your company, if you have them, can use it. So we build on things like Java. We have an open API. It's called a RESTful API. Support of open standards. Does it have support for these things? And a versatile API, right? We try and keep things simple. If you were to look up WoodWing, you'd see that we have all of our information out on our websites about our APIs. I've got 3 minutes. Look at that. Last tip. A DAM solution lets you add value to your digital assets, which is really what you guys are trying to do, right? You're trying to market, get more customers, generate more revenue, return. So repurpose the content for multiple channels. Why make something once? Why not reuse it for everything else that's out there? Use it for new products. Syndication, of course. Interesting concept, right? If you're writing content for yourselves, maybe other people might find it interesting. You could syndicate it. You know it's in the system. You can create a syndication feed out of a DAM system. Advertorial content, and then there's analytics. So analytics is interesting because within the system, a tool like Elvis watches everything that's going on. We version files. We know who's touched it. We know what they've done. We can look at Elvis and say, this is what people are searching on. Here's a tag cloud. Why are they doing a search and not finding anything? What's wrong with our taxonomies? Okay. And then that's it. Top 5 tips. Take time to analyze your workflow requirements. Don't think small. Keep in mind you're going to grow. Think farther out into the future. You're not trying to accommodate today's needs. You're trying to accommodate today plus tomorrow. You got to have a comprehensive metadata strategy, and you've got to have some way of applying the values so you can use it later. I cannot emphasize how important this is. Integration of your repository, and then think about how to monetize your assets, right? I'm pretty sure there's people out there who have creative folks who have a lot of stuff sitting on their local hard drives, sitting on a dusty server volume somewhere. You don't know what's out there. If you can get it all into a place where you can then start to search on it, you'll be amazed what you might find. Thank you. Great.